Okay, do you love God? Really? Do you love God? Now, all of us are probably going to say, yes, yes, of course, yes, I love God. Yeah. Okay, well, do you really? Do you feel like you love God? Ooh, well, yeah, kind of, I guess, right? Nobody wants to say no to that, right? We all want to say that we love God, and if somebody presses us on that question, well, do you feel like you love God? Um, we're all going to want to say yes to that as well. But what really is love? Is love a feeling, or is love an act of the will? Right? Because we've all been told from the time that we were children, love is an act of the will. So you love God, and if you don't feel like you love God, well, that's okay, because the essence of love is to make a choice. Love is to will what's best for the other, and et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, that's true. But is that really all there is to love, or maybe is there a little bit more to love? So, for example, if your mom asks you, "Honey, do you love me?" and you say, well, technically, mom, love is an act of the will. So, yes, I love you, and I choose to want what's best for you, but honestly, I don't really feel like I love you. Okay, is that going to be real love? How about our enemies, right? Our Lord said, you've been told that you should love your friends and hate your enemies, but I tell you to love your enemies, to do good to those who do evil to you. And we've all been told, right, from the time that we were children, that yes, we have to love our enemies, but we don't have to like our enemies. So, what does it mean to love our enemies? It means to, make this intellectual commitment to loving them and to desire what's best for them and to hope that they save their souls, and we can pray for them, but we don't have to like them. And that's okay, because we are truly loving our enemies if we do that. But that brings us back to this question of, well, if love is just this kind of act of the will, right? So we choose what's best for these people. We make this choice to love them, but we don't have to like them. Are we supposed to love God in the same way that we love our enemies? I don't think so. So then, what really is love? Is love just an act of the will? Or is it more than just an act of the will? Well, what does our Lord say about that? When the lawyer asks him, Lord, what is the greatest commandment in the law? And he says, the greatest commandment in the law is to love God with your will, but not with any of those feelings, because feelings are bad, right? No, he doesn't say that. He says, the greatest commandment is to love God with your whole intellect, your whole mind, your whole will, your whole heart, your whole strength. That sounds kind of like feelings. Or at least will with feelings on top. A lot of people, be they Protestants or the charismatics, a lot of modern Catholics, they really believe that the point of religion is to get the emotional the emotional experience, right? The religious experience, and that when I have the nice inner feelings, that is worshiping God, that is loving God. So Immanuel Kant, a Protestant philosopher, claimed that we can't really know things that are outside of us. All we can know is our experience of them. So, do I know this pen right here? Well, I don't really know the pen that's outside of me. I only have knowledge of my own experience of the pen. So then if we apply that bad philosophy to God, what can we know about God? Well, not much, right? Because we can't experience God. So if we can't even know the pen that's outside of me, all I can know is my experience of the pen. And when it comes to God, I can't even experience God. How can I know anything about God? So that means that the only way for me to get in contact with God is feelings. That feelings are the way to reach to the divine. Okay, this is bad philosophy. So a lot of Protestants today, a lot of modern Catholics, the whole charismatic movement, it's all built on this idea that feelings really are the worship of God. And that's how we come in contact with God. And so these people will get into their car and crank up their Christian worship music, so called. Why do they do that? Because they really think that having an emotional experience is worshiping God. Okay? And that's just not true. An emotional experience is not worshiping God. Okay, so we've got two extremes. One extreme is to think that having some kind of emotional experience, that is the love of God. The other extreme is to think that feelings are bad. So then, if we just have to love God with an act of the will, what are the feelings for? Why did God give us passions? Why did he give us emotions? Did God just create us, to know, love, and serve him with our intellect alone, and, then he gave us all these passions to kind of get in the way and to make it more difficult? I don't think so. So what are the feelings for? What did he give us all of those for? Okay, let's talk about feelings. There are two kinds of passion. There's the kind that comes before an act of the will, and there's the kind that comes after an act of the will. And we call the kind that comes before antecedent passion. And the kind that comes after an act of the will, we call that consequent passion. Because it comes as a consequence of an act of the will. Okay, some examples. You're walking in a dark alley and you hear a crash behind you. What happens, right? You gasp, your eyes get really big because they're looking out for danger. Your hands come up to protect yourself. You take this deep breath so that oxygen can get into your bloodstream. Your body starts pumping adrenaline. Okay? That's an emotion. That's a passion. But it's antecedent. It comes automatically. It comes before an act of the will. So then your body is in a state of suspense because it's the alarm system is on and your body's trying to figure out what it should do. It's waiting for a command from the prefrontal cortex, which is this part of the brain behind your forehead. And that's the decision-making part of the brain. So your body is in a state of suspense, and it's waiting for a command from the command center of your brain. So what happens? You turn around and you look and you realize, oh, it's just a cat that knocked over a trash can. Okay, then what happens? You breathe a sigh of relief, and then you go back to normal and you calm down within 15, 20 minutes. And you're back to normal. Okay, all of that stuff that comes before an act of the will, we call that antecedent passion because it comes before an act of the will. All right, well, what about consequent passion? Consequent passion comes after an act of the will. So, an example. You are running in a race and you're trying to win. You're kind of running along and then you realize when you're getting close to the end, you realize, I'm not going to win this race unless I really give it my all. Otherwise, that guy is going to beat me. So what do? You make an act of the will. Okay, I'm going to win this race. I'm going to beat that guy. And you make a strong act of the will, and what happens? You get a surge of adrenaline. And you run like you've never run before, and you win the race. That's an example of consequent passion. It's passion that comes after an act of the will, because you've chosen to do this, and the passions follow. Okay, this is something that people do not understand about passion. Antecedent passion decreases voluntariness. Consequent passion increases voluntariness. What does that mean? That means that passion that comes before an act of the will actually decreases your ability to make choices, and it decreases your willpower, and it decreases your free will, and it decreases the amount of voluntariness that you perform that action with. Okay, consequent passion is the opposite. Consequent passion increases voluntariness. That means that when you make a strong choice of the will, and you have passion that flows from that choice of the will, that actually increases the strength of your choice. It increases the voluntariness with which you perform that action. It increases your willpower, and it increases your ability to make will acts in the future. Okay, people don't understand this. This is something that people don't understand about passion. I want to get a t-shirt that says this. Antecedent passion decreases voluntariness. Consequent passion increases voluntariness. Okay, some examples. Let's say somebody does something annoying and you're just taken with rage and you just smack that person. Okay, well, that action was voluntary. You're still responsible for that. It's still your own fault, right? It's a sin. But you didn't do it with much voluntariness because you were just taken with the passion, right? There was some voluntariness, but not very much voluntariness. You almost did it half involuntarily because you were just kind of taken by this passion and you just kind of smacked somebody. That's an example of antecedent passion, this passion that comes before an act of the will. That's an example of how it decreases your voluntariness. Okay, now an example of consequent passion. You see somebody who does something annoying and you think, I'm going to smack that person. So you make a choice of the will. But you realize, I don't really have the courage to do it right now. So I'm going to go take a break, punch a wall, kick a desk, and stab a mattress. Okay, well now you're stirring up your passions voluntarily on purpose so that you can go back and do the deed. That stirring up of the passion actually increases your voluntariness. That means when you go back and smack that person, you're doing it very voluntarily, you're doing it on purpose, and you know exactly what you're doing and you're doing it anyway. Another example. Somebody does something that's really annoying and you're just taken with passion, you pull out a knife and you stab that person dead. Well, when you go to court, you're probably going to be convicted of maybe not murder, but right, probably not premeditated murder, but it's going to be nevertheless manslaughter or something, right? But since it's a crime of passion, maybe they'll let you off a little bit. Okay, that's an example of how antecedent passion decreases your voluntariness. Okay, but what about consequent passion? Let's say you see somebody and you think, I hate that guy, and I'm going to choose to murder him. But you realize, I don't really have the courage to do it, so I'm going to go make a plan, and I'm going to make a stronger act of the will, and I'm going to choose to do it strongly, and I'm going to make sure that I won't fail, and I'm going to exercise, and I'm going to train. And then you go and commit premeditated murder. Well, that's going to get you put in jail for a lot longer because it was premeditated. You see how this kind of passion that follows upon a choice of the will increases your voluntariness. The other thing that people don't understand about antecedent passion and consequent passion is that they go for both good things and bad things. So the examples I gave were for bad things. But what about good things? What about the love of God? Well, what would be antecedent passion applied to the love of God? Well, it'd be like when you get into your car and you crank up your Christian rock music and you just get all the emotional feelings. And you think, oh, I just love God so much. Okay, well, that's antecedent passion. That's passion that comes before an act of the will. What does that do? It actually decreases your voluntariness. That means it's decreasing your ability to love God. It's decreasing your free will. Well, what about consequent passion? When you choose, I'm going to love God. Even if I don't feel like I'm going to love God, I'm going to love God even more. And I'm going to love God even when it's hard. And I'm going to love God even when I'm suffering. And I'm going to learn everything I can about God so that I can love God more. And I'm going to increase my commitment. And I'm going to increase the strength with which I make that choice. Well, you know what's going to happen? The feelings are going to follow. And that's going to be consequent passion, which falls upon an act of the will, which actually increases your love of God. Okay, another example. So you wake up in the morning on the wrong side of the bed and you are just really crabby. And you just feel like being crabby for the rest of the day. Okay, well, what kind of passion is that? That's antecedent passion. It comes before an act of the will. So that actually decreases your voluntariness. That's literally what it means to be a slave to your passions. But on the other hand, if you realize, I'm kind of in a bad mood today, maybe I should stop being in a bad mood. And then you make a choice and you say, all right, I'm not going to be in a bad mood anymore. I'm going to be in a good mood. And then you choose to do that and you choose to do it strongly and then you force a smile on your face. If you do that, you will actually start to feel better because the passions will follow your act of the will and that will actually increase your voluntariness. We have intellect, will, passions. Our intellect thinks about what we should do, the will chooses, and then the passions follow and they help us to accomplish those things. But most people don't act that way. Most people act the other way around. Most people just act on antecedent passion, passion that comes automatically before an act of the will. And then their will chooses to follow their passions. And then if the intellect even gets involved, which it probably doesn't, because people don't really live on the intellectual level, the intellect kind of justifies, like, oh, okay, well, why did I do that? I don't know. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Or, well, I felt like doing it. Or, it's good for me to follow my heart. Yeah, well, that's literally what it means to be a slave to your passions, if you just choose to do whatever your passions want you to do. That's not freedom. A lot of people say, oh, well, freedom is to follow your heart. No, it's not. If you just choose to do whatever your heart desires, that's your will following your passions. That's antecedent passion. It decreases your voluntariness. That actually decreases your free will. That's what makes you a slave to your passions. True freedom would be if we get our heart to follow our choices. That would make us truly free. So St. Thomas Aquinas says, and I can't get enough of this, the more strongly the will chooses something, the more it causes passion. The more strongly the will chooses something, the more it causes passion. And this is something people don't understand about the will and about passion. So, when you see those paintings of the saints, and they're all teary-eyed and pious, and it looks like they're very sentimental and emotional, what people don't understand is that they think that that's antecedent passion. They think that the saints are just being taken with passion. And when we look at those paintings, especially teenagers, when teenagers see those paintings, they think, well, I don't feel that way about God. I don't feel that way about holy things. So am I doing something wrong? And the answer is no. That passion that you see portrayed in the saints, that's not antecedent passion. That's consequent passion. That's passion that comes after a strong act of the will. That's why the saints are so passionate about God and about holy things. Because they've chosen strongly and their passions follow their choices. So if we go back to the question, do you love God? Well, sure, we love God if we've made that choice, because that's the essence of love. It's to make that choice, the act of the will. But if we don't feel like we love God, well, maybe that's because we haven't really chosen to love God very much, or we haven't chosen very strongly. So Adam and Eve, our first parents, before the fall, would have had passions, yes, but they would have had only consequent passion, which means they would have only had passion that follows after an act of the will. They would not have had antecedent passion, which means they would not have had automatic passion that just comes. They would have had complete control of their passions. And then, with the fall of our first parents, because they disobeyed God, as a punishment, their bodies began to disobey them. And that original integrity was lost. So for us, the task is to try to regain that original integrity, that integration of the intellect, the will, and the passions. And how do we do this? Through the practice of virtue.